You're listening to the Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley. While you're drowning in busy work, your competitors are scaling because they've automated the right things. Most entrepreneurs automate everything or nothing, and both approaches kill growth. Let's talk about how to automate with intention. Welcome to Public Health Entrepreneurs, the podcast for visionary leaders who are ready to transform public health and healthcare through innovation. I'm your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley, and as a public health entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in healthcare and public health, I understand the unique challenges and opportunities that come with bridging multiple disciplines. If you are an interdisciplinary professional, a high-functioning leader with expertise across different fields, then you're in the right place. You started your business to create real change in communities, not to spend hours on repetitive tasks that steal time from your meaningful work. The solution isn't to automate everything. That creates a really poor client experience. The alternative really is to automate with intention. Now, here are some practical tips to reclaim your time without losing the human connection that drives your impact. We're going to start with the invisible work that drains your energy. Think of it as what to automate, all right? So focus on repetitive tasks, the behind-the-scenes tasks that eat up your time but don't require your unique expertise. So here are just a few examples to think about, ponder, see what steps, what jumps out at you, what resonates with you. So my first example could be lead inquiries. So you can have auto responses that acknowledge receipt of the inquiry and set expectations. It could be as simple as when someone completes a form on your website to, inquire about your services, you can have an automation that simply acknowledges the receipt of their inquiry, thanking them and letting them know that you will be responding within 24 hours or whatever your time frame is to set that expectation so that they know it's been received and have some expectation about when you'll be getting back to them. That's a really easy thing that you can do because otherwise your leads could be coming in at any given moment and you can't scramble constantly trying to catch the alert in your inbox and trying to respond to it while you're doing any number of other things. But a simple automation in that moment goes a long way. I've done that. A great example for myself is early on with the podcast. When I first started podcasting 8 years ago, we had automation. So when someone would opt into the newsletter for the podcast, I was always excited. And we had a guide that we would share to let them know, a little bit about the podcast, where to find it in the different apps, answering some of those questions, initially that people had around the podcast. Because believe it or not, 8 years ago, a lot of people really weren't sure of what a podcast was or how to find it and how to listen to it. So our questions were around platforms. And so we created some information that we always shared with people as they were opting in and getting, first discovering our podcast and wanting to get on our newsletter list and keeping in touch. So that was a simple automation that shared that information with them. Whenever someone discovered our podcast and wanted to get on the newsletter, they would automatically receive a response that welcomed them into our community and let them know how to connect with us. And I think at that point, we had a Facebook group back in those days. So those are things that you can do when someone is coming on board. That's kind of a lead, but also kind of an onboarding, even though it's not a paying client, but someone's coming into my community. So if someone's inquiring, asking questions, wanting to get to know you, if they're filling out a form, you can have an automation. If they are coming on board to your community, whether it's a paid community, a free community, you can have some automation that welcomes them into the community and where to listen, like in my case of the example of the podcast, where the links to the direct platforms, the more popular ones where people, typically listen. And some of those general onboarding pieces of information that let someone know that they're in the right place, that they're welcomed, and they know what to do first or next. So those are some examples of things that can be automated well. If it's a client, another example of client onboarding could be, in this case, now that I've, with this podcast, Public Health Entrepreneurs, one of the offers that I often mention on this podcast is the opportunity to work with me one-on-one. So that's something, if you meet with clients one-on-one, it's a paid opportunity. So like maybe you're a coach or you have a service like that where someone pays a certain fee and comes on board to work with you. Well, you can have the intake process automated. You can have your availability on a calendar where they select a time that they want to work with you, meet with you. They select that time, they make their payment, and then you can also have those initial forms, the things that you need to collect and find out about them. In my case, I would ask for some background information. What's the website of your business? Your LinkedIn information. I'd ask you to describe your challenge that you're having and what we're working on. So a lot of that initial information I can collect through an automation, and you can do that in several scenarios with onboarding clients. So I've given you a few examples of lead generation where you can have lead inquiries. You can automate that process where you're collecting the information from their forms or whatever requests coming through your website. You can put some simple automation in place that lets them know, thank you for responding. We've got your information. We'll get back to you in whatever the time frame is, and make sure that you do it so that that expectation is met. That's a way to automate that initial touch point. And then also, like I said, communities or onboarding to it, even if it's an email list, whatever it is that you're having them onboard to for following your podcast or following your newsletter, whatever it is, joining your community. Those are ways that you can automate some of those initial onboarding processes and then those initial client meetings. If it's a service that you offer at a set price, like a coaching package or something, an appointment, if you charge for your appointments, then you can use automation to make that process a little more smooth and seamless and pull you out of the administrative busyness. And a lot of that part of your business can flow really well. Another example is the calendar management, booking appointments. So whether you charge or not for the appointments, but having those calendar automations where they can pick from your availability and schedule that appointment, and then you could automate the reminders. You can automatically get a reminder so that it goes on their calendar, and then you can remind them the day before, the hour before the meeting, a few minutes before the meeting kicks off. You could automate that entire process, which is fantastic. So if you're already doing this, you're already reaping the benefits. But if you're in a very busy phase and you've been manually going back and forth with people, well, let's get together. And, you want to have anything from a coffee chat to a discovery call, whatever it is you're calling it, you want to meet with them. Then you go back and forth in emails trying to find a time that works with you. Well, if you use these calendar and its automations, you can streamline that whole process. And then you're just, you're simply meeting someone that you're interested in talking to and bringing to a meeting. Maybe you engage on social media or you meet them at a conference. Then you're sharing the link to that calendar, your availability, and they can go through the process, pick a time, and then get all the automations. And then you just show up. They show up on your calendar and you meet with them. And it just really streamlines that process for both, for yourself and that new client prospect, that whoever that person is, it's just the first touch with you in your business in that process. These are some great examples of how you can use automations. And, I mentioned the follow-up email. So once they book an appointment, those follow-up emails that remind them. And so those are just a handful of examples of great ways to incorporate automation, because these are things that you could get really lost in the administrative weeds trying to handle. And even before, so I'm going to say at this point, I was going to say before you hire a team member, but I want to add here that if you're solo and you have not added a team member, then I would encourage you to streamline your processes and automate whatever you possibly can so that you're not hiring someone and paying them to do something that could have been automated. Hope that makes sense. So if you already have an administrative assistant, think about what you have them doing, because if they're doing a lot of repetitive tasks that could be automated, that's a way that you can maybe incorporate their help into, deciding what parts of what you do can we automate to make the most of their time, get the biggest return on your investment of resources into having your team member. Okay. So one more thing I'll say here, kind of a test for yourself, is if you find yourself doing the exact same repetitive task a few times a week, then also if it does not require your creative thinking or personal judgment, then I encourage you to find a way to automate that. All right. So now I want to talk about protecting what makes you human. So let's flip this over and talk for just a moment about what not to automate, because this is where it can be a little tricky and people, it can be exciting to automate and to, have you start getting, in a flow with it when you start automating a few things. And then sometimes people go too far. And I feel like this is an important distinction and a time for us to talk about what not to automate or when you shouldn't automate. So I encourage you to resist the urge to systematize everything that involves relationship building or creative problem solving or handling the unexpected. So the things that keep you human are the things that need to stay in your wheelhouse and not be automated. So let me give you a few examples. The initial discovery call. So you can automate all those things, the scheduling process and to getting them to the discovery call. But I advise against automating the discovery call. That requires your human interaction, your expertise, you to be present as a human. So clients need to feel heard and understood from day one. So that initial discovery call needs to be you, 100% you. I also encourage you, when you think about anything that involves a custom strategy, anything under the strategic development side of things, your expertise and intuition can't be replicated by software. So it's really important that you are using your strategic mind because, of course, I talk all the time about this interdisciplinary professional and your strength. Well, that's what makes you so unique. I could not encourage you to automate any part of that requires your unique perspective, that interdisciplinary, that sweet spot where all of your background, whether it's two overlapping areas of expertise or if you have multiple, that's your custom strategic development superpower. And you should not automate any of that. All of that needs to be coming from you as you're talking to clients or prospective clients. I would also add here crisis management. So when things go wrong, your clients want a real person, not a chat box. So most of us, especially if we're talking about consultants, we don't have the kinds of businesses that are true, urgent, extreme, like crisis moments where your clients are going to need you in an emergency situation, like an ER doctor or something like that, right? But there are moments when there is a crisis, something happens with your client and they need your thoughts on this. What do I do? What are my next steps? They're wanting your guidance. Or it could be in a part of like your coaching offer. It could be a part of your consulting package or how you show up and support your client. So it may not be the type of fire that needs the fire department, but it's, something has gone wrong and they need to hear from you. It may not be the immediate, like they've got to hear from you right now, but when they hear from you, it can't be your automated system. It needs to be from you. So be careful and be really aware and cognizant of that. It doesn't mean that they have to get to you immediately. So you carry your phone all the time. If they're reaching out to you at 8:00 at night after hours and you shut down at 5:00, that you should answer that 8:00 phone call. That's not what I mean. It just means when you respond, it needs to be you and not an automation, especially when you're responding to their crisis or when something that has gone wrong. And I'll give you another example here, and that is under the category of any high value relationship moments. So anytime you have a check-in appointment or a strategic conversation with your client, then that needs to be you. Because again, that's your strategic, unique mind, your interdisciplinary superpower that they're wanting to, that's where they're tapping into. And that has to be uniquely you. So if your client would feel disappointed to discover this interaction was automated, keep it human. Like your client's not going to be disappointed to find out that the scheduling process was automated. We're used to that. That makes it very convenient for them. But anything that would make them disappointed, then keep that in the human category. You can always systematize these, later, once your processes are more rock solid and you have a team that's trained, then you can possibly move into automating some of these things that I'm talking about. But for right now and for a while, until you really have it in a rock solid category and some team structure, then automate the things that are kind of invisible and don't require that, all those examples in the category I gave you before. And then what makes you human, protect that. Okay. So use automation to enhance, not replace client connection. Automation isn't about replacing yourself. It's about amplifying your ability to serve clients and create human impact. When you automate invisible work, protect human moments, enhance rather than replace connection, and make strategic hire versus automation or automate decisions, you build a business that scales without losing its soul. Start with one tip from today's episode. Your clients get a better experience, you reclaim time for high impact work, and your mission gets the attention it deserves. The goal isn't the most automated business, it's the most impactful one. If you need help, guidance, support to apply any of these strategies that I've shared with you on the episode today, then I invite you to explore the opportunities to work together, either one-on-one or in our mastermind group program. As someone who understands the unique challenges of being an interdisciplinary leader, I can help you customize your strategic next steps. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more. The links are also provided in the show notes. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more.